Hi, everybody. This is Oriah, and I'm back. Stephen Mehler, my guest, my special guest and friend, just informed me that I have been gone for a year and a half, I think.
Yes.
Which I can't believe. But yeah, there's a backstory to that. But I want to tell you why I'm back. I came back because of Stephen. Stephen Mehler is the author, and he is, well, actually, let me show you his books. He is the author of these amazing books, The Land of Osiris and the Crystal Skull book, which I know a lot of people are very interested in crystal skulls, and From Light into Darkness. So he is a philosopher of khemitology, and it is really the study of ancient Egypt, but from an alternative perspective. I consider him a wisdom teacher. I consider myself one, but he's a wisdom teacher in other areas that I have just started tapping into and understanding about human nature, the beginning of civilization. If you go to my playlist on my YouTube, the channel that you're watching, you will see a lot of videos from us. We have been uncovering and discovering more and more and more about how we came to be. It's not just our origins, it's also how it influenced us today as a people. And so I haven't found anybody out there that is the most proficient and the most intuitive and masterful in this topic, and he gives me goosebumps every time I talk to him. He's super fun to listen to, and I know there'll be more shows, right, Stephen?
Yes, there will. It's up to you.
Yeah, so my husband is psychic medium Riz Mirza, and we just came back from a 8-day trip to Egypt, and I know it's in the middle of COVID and everything, but we have to live, right? So we wanted to enjoy our beautiful planet. And so we went to Egypt, and Stephen was by our side via phone. And we were able to weave and go into some of the areas that the typical tour guides, the Egyptologist government issued tour guides, don't cover. So Stephen was able to go deeper with us, and also we were channeling, and so we combined them. So we're going to be talking today about the Kemet influence in the tunnel system that runs underneath Egypt. We're also going to discuss Sekhmet. We're going to talk about his origins and his history with his guru, his teacher, his wisdom teacher, Hakim. So welcome, Stephen Mehler. I am so excited to be back in the pilot seat with you.
So am I. I really miss talking with you.
Yes. So please, where we'd like to launch is when I was there, we were walking around and we didn't even get into all the tunnels. We just barely tapped into it. But I started realizing there's a giant tunnel system. And I'd love to know more about why it exists, how it got there, whatever you know.
Well, let's lay the groundwork for that. Because as you have asked me, I've studied this subject close to 55 years. This November will be 30 years since I first went to Egypt.
Wow.
I did 20 tours and 22 trips. I did 20 tours in 20 years. So it was almost one a year, but sometimes it wasn't. But the difference here is that I was led to an indigenous wisdom keeper in Egypt who became my master, my teacher. And his name was Abdel Hakim Awiyan. Now, in Arabic, Abdel Hakim means slave or servant to wisdom. And indeed he was. And the last name, Awiyan, is a famous ancient tribe that came down into what would be Egypt. They were known as the Eye people. Hakim had this very unusual green eyes, which was a signal of his tribe, and I have hazel eyes. So first thing I did when I went, I knew about him before I went. I had taken part in a San Francisco Whole Life Expo in 1987, came across a group that was there, a travel group agency, who were the first group to actually bring people to Egypt in the 80s for spiritual tours, for not just the Egyptology, have spiritual experiences. And they were using him as their tour guide. And so I was talking to these people, and they said, well, you got to come to Egypt with us. You're interested in the alternative. We have a tour guide. His name is Hakim. That was 1987. Never forgot the name. And through a series of miraculous events, the money came for me, and I went for 3 weeks in 1992. The first moment I saw him. Now, I've repeated this story many times, but it's worth repeating.
Mm-hmm.
My interest began around the age of 8. Now, at one time I thought that was unique, but since, as I said, I've done 20 tours, I've come across many, many people, and even yourself, who had an interest, fascination to ancient Egypt, even never known a small child. So for me, around the age of 8, my mother kept 2 great pictorial magazines of the day. This is the early 50s. I'm dating myself. And there was an issue of National Geographic magazine. I opened it up to a picture of the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid. And to be honest with you, although I didn't know it then, I've never been the same since.
Wow.
The Sphinx spoke to me.
Yeah.
The Sphinx is my guide. You asked one time when we started our early discussions about my guides, and I've told you some. One another one is an Akhenaten, who we'll talk about. But the Sphinx has been the primary guide of my life. Now, as it was at that 8 years old, I didn't say, oh, I'm going to become an Egyptologist. I'm going to study all about this. No. But it led me to the sciences.
Well, I believe it awoken something inside of you that was already in you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
She was always there, and she woke in that spirit. And so she led me through the whole thing. And so to make a long story short, I have 3 degrees in the sciences. I rejected academia as an answer. I rejected religion as an answer. I rejected what I learned in school and from parents, et cetera, et cetera. And I went on the path, like many do, have to find it all out for myself. So through a series of miraculous events, as I said, the money came in 1992. I went to Egypt. I was told that Hakim was going to be our guide. The first day, standing on the Giza Plateau in front of the Sphinx with his back to the Sphinx talking to us, I looked at him and I immediately went into an altered state. And I looked at the Sphinx. Now, I used to tell this story, and I'm repeating myself. People have probably heard this many times, have heard me speak, but I used to say this because he used to get a kick out of it. He used to laugh when I would say this when he was with me in the lecture. I would look at the Sphinx, and I would look at him. I would look at the Sphinx, and I would look at him, and I couldn't tell who was older, because Hakim had a face of 1,000,000 years of wisdom in his face. As he got to be very old, he reached the stage that we call the stage of Aten, the wise man, the indigenous keeper, and the wisdom was all in his face. But he would laugh when I would say that. He'd get a big kick out of it. But then I turned to the Sphinx, and she spoke to me clearly in my head. She said, "This is the man you've been searching for all your life. This is your teacher. He is your master. He is my son." Boom. And just as I came out of that, he was talking. And I heard him talking, and he was talking about the Sphinx. And he turned over his left shoulder and pointed, and he said quite clearly and distinctly for all of us to hear, and she is 54,000 years old. So immediately I said to myself, this is my man. This is the guy that I want to speak with. This is my teacher. So needless to say, through this whole 3 weeks, I spent by his side. I went to his house. We talked. So clearly he presented an alternative theory to what Egyptology was presenting. He said there was a previous civilization to what we call the dynasties, dynastic Egypt. And he said that civilization was called Khem, or with a T ending. When they made masculine and feminine nouns, the T made a noun feminine, Khemt.
There was no vowels, correct?
No, vowels was sacred. Vowels, just like in Hebrew, vowels are usually not written. In modern Hebrew, they do vowel points so people can speak the language. But a true ancient Hebrew script will have no vowels. Vowels were sacred.
So it's pronounced Khemt.
Khemt. See,
you pronounce the T very strong.
Khemt.
Khemt.
Most Anglo people can't use the ch that is in Hebrew, is in Arabic. Even in Germany, we say ich bin. No, yes. They say Kemet. It's Khemet. So I spelled it Khemit to differentiate from other groups that were using the term and were not teaching the way we were teaching. So Hakim and I founded a whole new discipline that we called khemitology. So when people ask me, I don't teach Egyptology, even though you have to learn Egyptology to get to khemitology. We used to describe it like building a house. And khemitology is the basement, the foundation. It gives you a basis, but the penthouse is khemitology. That's where you go to the higher, deeper understanding. So first thing, previous civilization, they built the pyramids and the Sphinx. The pyramids were not tombs for kings. And as he said, the Sphinx was much, much older than anyone at that time would agree. Now we have corresponding agreement. But then, no one would even bother to say the Sphinx was less than 4,500 years old, more than. So, so to come to your point, how he developed the system itself. This is how I usually start lectures. So it's great that that's the question you ask, because this is when I start a tour, doing a tour the Hakim way. We start on the Giza Plateau, standing in front of the Middle Pyramid, not the Great Pyramid, the Middle Pyramid. Why? Because this is where he discovered the truth. After he was an undergraduate, he graduated with dual degrees, and so he is an academic. He was an academic as well as an indigenous wisdom keeper, and that's important for people to understand. It wasn't that he was just coming out of nowhere. The man was an amazing scholar of any subject. There was no subject we could not converse on, but he was degreed. He had dual degrees in Egyptology and archaeology from Fuad, what was then known as Fuad University in 1952. It is now Cairo University. So he was academically trained. But as soon as he got his degree, and he had this tradition in his family, which I can go deeper about, an uncle and his grandfather, his maternal grandfather was really the one. Because now that we have pictures of his grandfather, we see that Hakim was a dead ringer for his grandfather when he became an old man. So he inherited this tremendous wisdom from his grandfather, and he may not have even known him. I'm not sure yet whether his grandfather passed before he was born even, but it was his son, his grandfather's son, Hakim's maternal uncle, who took him under his wing. So he had.
I have to tell you this quick story. When we were in the bus with the Egyptologist, I got a kick out of.
Ramsey.
He brought you. He mentioned you and Hakim. He said Stephen with the white beard and Hakim. They're very well known here with the Egyptologists, and he's been in business as an Egyptologist for over 20 years.
That's amazing.
He says we used to see him all the time, and then he's told the story of how a soldier left a notebook at the top of the pyramid and somehow got into your hands, and it's a myth, that has gone out. And I thought that was so fascinating. In the middle of Egypt, they were talking about you.
I'm glad we cleared it up, because I never saw the book, but I know the story. But yeah, that was interesting to me immediately, that you had a guide that knew Hakim. That's not by accident.
And
majority of the guides now are too young.
Right.
They wouldn't have known him. They wouldn't have known about him. So that was, to me, right away, that okay, you guys are on the right track. So he's an undergraduate, maybe in his young 20s. He stands in front of the Middle Pyramid, looking east to where the sun would rise, and he realized he was standing on a grid line.
Right.
East-west grid line. And then he discovered that there were tunnels underneath that were on that grid line. And he was the first to propose that the tunnels under the Giza Plateau, in fact, they're under all the sites, were tunnels for water. That water was brought from the Western Desert to the Giza Plateau, and water was the source of the energy for the pyramids.
So it wasn't coming from the Nile?
Yes, but not the present Nile. What if you get it? You read Land of Osiris, we talk about what's called the Nile, which is out in the Western Desert.
Okay.
They carved tunnels in bedrock at least 50 to maybe 100 miles to bring the water from the west to the Giza Plateau. So the current Nile River is a modern river. The ancient Nile was out in the Western Desert, and was probably 50 times wider than the river is.
Now,
today.
that water that came through, did it come around the Sphinx and the
everywhere?
Pyramids, the
whole plateau. The whole plateau is honeypocked with tunnels. Think of your body. Think of your arterial system, how veins and arteries, they cross each other. By crossing each other, they create magnetic fields. So the whole Giza Plateau is honeycombed with tunnels. We have found, and it's probably not even the lowest level, it goes down 1,000 feet.
The tunnels.
So
were ancient people realizing that this land had a certain magnetic field or some sort of energy field that was a little bit more intense than probably other areas?
You always ask questions that lead to a whole major discussion. I'll explain. But I want to just people understand, this is where he came to the observation. And then he went down into the tunnels. He went down in the tunnels and swam in the tunnels.
He swam in the tunnels.
I can send you a picture. We would go to Saqqara. Saqqara is 8 kilometers. 8 kilometers from Giza. That's at least 5 miles. So he was once in Saqqara, and he found a tunnel, opening to a tunnel, and he went down in. He was 17 years old, same age he was when he found the book.
That's bold.
And he swam, and he got up and he crawled, and he swam, and he crawled, and he swam, and he came out on the Giza Plateau.
And now there's no water in those tunnels now, right?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Yes,
really? So because I've seen documents or documentation where there's dry tunnels, so there must be also water tunnels as well.
Under the Sphinx is water. If they go down, there's an opening in the rump of the Sphinx, in the back of the Sphinx, that leads down to a tunnel. If you go down in that tunnel, you come into water. He came out on the Giza Plateau right behind the Sphinx. And then he concluded that's what this water was for. And then he concluded that the middle pyramid where he was standing was the first pyramid built on the Giza Plateau. So right away, we throw out the whole Egyptology theory that these pyramids were built for tombs for kings in a certain order. This one got first, blah, blah, blah. No.
Right.
The middle pyramid stands on the highest point of the Giza Plateau.
I've heard people on the channel Gaia, which I just don't even watch anymore because I can't watch it anymore. But
I refuse to
just make up whatever they want.
Exactly.
There was a channel that was giving this big story about the old version of ancient Egypt, not the one we discuss. And he said that that's the final, that's the way it was. It was a tomb and this and that. And there's so much misinformation out there. And so for people like yourself, who's made their lifetime in discovering and uncovering.
Well, let me tell you about that, because every year, in fact, just recently, somebody writes to me, somebody sends me an email or a message on Facebook with a new theory about what the Great Pyramid is about. Most of them I just laugh off as being ridiculous. Some have some potential ideas. But the fact of the matter is, the worst theory about pyramids is that they were tombs.
Right.
Because absolutely they were not.
So we have agreed and concluded in other shows that the pyramid hosts and creates an energy. It's like a conduit, right? It like holds energy, and you could use sound.
Many different ways, okay?
Okay.
Water comes in the pyramid. By use of sound, splits the bond of water to hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen gas is produced. That's one of the things. Christopher Dunn wrote a book, a British engineer who's now an American, in 1998, when he and I were colleagues for a while, stating that he called it the Giza power plant, that the Great Pyramid is a machine that can produce hydrogen gas.
Right.
Well, we also know now in 2019, a combined team of Russian and German physicists went inside the Great Pyramid and did a whole bunch of tests. Only one of the conclusions they came out with is that the Great Pyramid can produce electromagnetism. Now, no hard scientist had ever said that before. We've been saying that, like I said, since I met Hakim in 92, we've been saying that the pyramid is a machine that produces energy. So what did we say? Let me tell you, just as a beginning, just as a start. The Great Pyramid produces electromagnetism. It produces radio waves. It produces quantum waves. It produces. I have a friend that I've lost contact with, a Ukrainian quantum physicist who's a world-class physicist, who got in touch with us in the 90s and said he's convinced that the Great Pyramid was built also produce quantum waves, meaning that the people that built it knew quantum physics, and that we're only approaching the understanding.
That's correct. And I've heard you say that. Riz's channel that we know that that's the highest wisdom on what those pyramids were about. And furthermore, they had the ancient wisdom to know at the time to heal people and bring people into the temple and use sound vibration to bring yourself to higher consciousness.
Right. Not in the Great Pyramid. Great Pyramid was not a temple until it ceased its function. It was a machine. We have told people that if they had gone inside the Great Pyramid when it was fully functioning, you would have been vaporized. That's the amount of energy that was produced. Now, you said sound, as I said.
It vibrated.
And I said to both of you before you went to Egypt, when Hakim picked out me to be his main disciple, because of my background in archaeology and already in metaphysics and mysticism, he said he wanted me to concentrate on two things, water and sound. the knowledge the ancients had of both, and the interplay. So
Right.
sound, yes, but sound was used to build the Great Pyramid because they produced devices. When there was one in the old museum, I hope it's still going to be in the new museum. I can send you the video of my talking about it. A spinning disc that would produce a sound wave. A mirror would reflect that sound wave back. It would produce these waves. In the wells of these sine waves, there is no gravity. Now, this has already been demonstrated. I'm still waiting to hear from these people. But in the 2010s, I was contacted by two guys from Britain. One was a physicist, one was an engineer. They were doing together their doctoral research at Bristol University in the UK on sound being able to alter gravity. I said I would not reveal their work until they published the date, and I never heard from them again, but I imagine they have published. And so they were working on the mere fact that sound produces anti-gravity. And that's how the pyramids were built. That's how they raised these kind of stones. The Great Pyramid weighs 6 to 8 million tons of limestone and granite. There's a block inside the Great Pyramid, which the Egyptologists never talk about, a foundation block in the Great Pyramid that is estimated to weigh 880 tons. Now, how could they move that? By lifting it? Please. Not by physical means, by metaphysical means, by creating anti-gravity fields, and a child could lift a stone with a pinky and put it into place. So that's number one. So that was the basis of what he taught us. And water was key. Water was the key to life. Now I'm wearing an ankh, right? Now Egyptology will tell you, oh, ankh means life. Ankh means life. Yeah, that's the exoteric explanation. And how they'll explain it patriarchally is that's the vagina and that's the penis. So it's masculine and feminine, all clothes. Well, that's patriarchal garbage, because the original explanation had nothing to do with that. The original explanation is it is the womb, fallopian tubes, and the vagina. Where would any Commission man observe where life comes from outside from his woman's body? Through the vagina. So that's life. But that's still just exoteric. Esoteric meaning of the ankh is it means water. How could it mean water? Well, all the keys to the temples of ancient Egypt were in the shape of an ankh. Why? Because water is the key to life. And sometimes the pyramids were also called the Per-Ankh, the house of life. Per-Netter is what they were, the house of the netter, house of nature. That's why they were machines.
Can you explain to those who don't know what netter is?
I will, because that's the basis of Egyptology, of khemitology. So that was it. That started.
Netters are the gods.
Well, that's it. Basically, the word has been totally mistranslated. Now, there's an author who's very hard to read. His name was R.A. Schwaller de Lubitsch. John Anthony West was a champion of Schwaller's teaching. Schwaller was the first one to question in the 1930s that the term netter meant god or goddess, deity. He said, no, it was an aspect of the divine, a part of, a force, a principle. Hakim further took it to say it was a sense. So he would tell us we are innately born with 360 senses. We label 180 feminine, we label 180 masculine. So he says, if you think you only have 5, then you are crippled. Because that's what we're taught. We only have 5 senses. No. But he would say, listen to what people would say. Someone would come to him and say, I saw a dream last night. He'd say, no, you didn't. You were asleep. Your eyes were closed. You're not using your eyes. So he said, we only have the language of the 5. Mm-hmm. I feel you. I feel you. I'm not touching you. I'm not feeling you, but I feel you. There's some other sense that is sensing a feeling. All right. And no, again, I used to go back to the expression that was a very popular African-American expression in the 70s, when you'd say something to and a brother would say, I hear you, man. I hear you. But it's not with the ears.
Right.
It's your instinct. Those are the senses. Mm-hmm. So, again, primary teaching of khemitology, the Commissions were not worshiping 360 gods and goddesses. They were principles, aspects of the divine, senses that they knew they had. So the whole idea of going to the sites, and you would awake, each site, of course, is dedicated to a netter. Each netter has a sound frequency, and a color, and a crystal, and an herb, etc., etc. So when you go to the sites, and how we teach, as Hakim would teach, to work with both sides of the brain. Okay, you go there, the Egyptologist says, blah, 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 this inscription means this means that, this temple was built by this king, blah, blah, blah. And then, Hakim would do it differently, of course. He would say what it really means, but that's working with the left brain. But to work with the right brain, you go, and he would know each site has a power place where the water is coming through, combining with crystal. I would always teach when I taught that wherever there's a so-called power place in the world, sacred site, there's three things present. Underground running water, not static water, running water, a natural source of crystal, and what we call igneous rock, which is a granite, basalt, diorite, full of crystal. So the crystal vibrates with the water, produces electromagnetic field. That's what you feel when you go to a sacred site. You feel the energy. Wow. And then we're going to return to that.
Right.
So why the Sphinx is who she is it is, in my opinion, the number one power place on the planet. Water is still flowing here. In fact, in 1939, the Egyptians themselves found a tunnel that led from the Sphinx to the Great Pyramid. And they never talk about it today. No Egyptologist talks about it. So the Sphinx was a main hub. She was the beginning. She was the first thing created above ground. As we say, she is Tef Nut. She represents the great mother who the Commissions called Nut. She was the sky, the vault of the sky. She covered all that is created and all that is uncreated. So Hakim would say, what is where the Sphinx was over 56,000 years ago, there was just a limestone outcropping, which they call in geology a yardang, just an unformed mass of limestone. But the people then, coming into sense and consciousness, knew that this was a sacred spot. So he would tell us, people came to this area 56,000 years ago to just meditate in front of the Sphinx, to gain the energy. So she's always been there. But when they decided to make a statue, they decided this way. Tef Nut. Tef is translated as humidity, moisture, also spit, saliva. So here's what they're saying. When the great mother wanted to manifest herself on the planet, she spit. Where she spit, they carved a statue. Then it was the Sphinx. And the original face of the Sphinx was not as it is today. Today is a black African woman. I can name a title. Her name was Neet Khotep, Neet Khotep, but that was way back in the early dynasties. A particular king wanted to honor his mother, recarved the face of the Sphinx, and his mother was a black African woman. But that's not the original face. The original face of the Sphinx would be like you saw with Tefnut. The original face of the Sphinx would have been like Sekhmet, Mut, a human. And if you really looked at Sekhmet closely, you would see she has human eyes and a lioness face. So it's a combination, human and lioness. So why did they pick the lioness? Because the lioness, as well as the vulture, who they also chose, was excellent mothers. Again, these were the people who observed nature. Netter means nature. And this is why they would use animals, not because they were worshiping animals. The animals that are on the heads of the netters represent the principle that netter is. So the lioness was a great mother. So they said, she's a symbol of the great mother. So Sekhmet, of course, herself, we'll talk about her. We'll go back to her because you're going to ask about her. But so it's Tefnut is the Sphinx, the spit of the mother. And she is 54,000 years old. And Hakim would say, somebody proved me wrong. Nobody has. So we've had tons of geologists who've agreed. Dr. Robert Schoch is the most famous geologist who John Anthony West brought to Egypt. He looked at the Sphinx. He said, oh, no, this erosion is much older. It's not wind and sand, which it would have been for the last couple of thousand years, but it's water erosion on the body of the Sphinx and the Sphinx enclosure. It hasn't significantly rained in Egypt in 8,000 to 10,000 years. So right away, she has to be older than that. So I do a whole lecture about it. I sent the video to Riz where I talk about, we know geological marker called the Mousterian pluvial. People can Google that, Mousterian pluvial. I'll spell it for you. And it occurred around 30,000 years ago. It was the only time there was significant rainfall to cause the erosion. It's on the body of the Sphinx. So we have a marker right there, geology. She's at least 30,000 years old. And Hakim would say, 54,000, somebody proved me wrong. So I really wanted to not continue because I want you to talk. So this is the basis of what we call khemitology, previous civilization, highly advanced. using all the senses to build pyramids, carve Sphinx, and to build temples. And it devolved. We fell out of it because we go by cycles. We talk about khemitology, 5 cycles, the stages of the sun. Kheper, which is dawn. Ra, which is noon. Ra is not the sun god. Wrong. And then there's Un, which is the sun as a sky. Aten, which is the sun at its height, where a full consciousness. And then Amen, where it's night, darkness. Everything is hidden. Everything is separation. So as I've always said, when I gave my lectures, I would stop at this point and ask the audience, what stage do you think we're in now? And in the early days, people would say, oh, we're in Aten, aren't we? We're the highest. No, wrong. Thanks for playing. We're in Amen for the last 5,000 years of darkness hidden. That's patriarchy, which you and I got into a very deep discussion about. So, key to understanding ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, pre-dynastic and dynastic, was a matriarchy. Descent went from mother to daughter. So there were no male pharaohs. Period. We've all used the word wrong, including myself. The term is per-ah. Per means house. Ah is high. It's the high house. So here come the Greeks, here come the Romans, here came the later Hebrews, the Jews, and they say, oh, well, that must mean the male king. Per-o in Hebrew was the pharaoh. The Greeks come up with the word pharaoh, first on per-ah, to the male king. Nope. There were no male pharaohs. The woman was the one who decided who ruled. So
I do have a question about this area.
Go.
I think there was a conversation we had one time, and I needed some clarification. Was there ever any statues that were created in the likeness of a female, but then when patriarchy came in, did they relabel those statues to say they were male?
Well, I'll tell you what is the classic example, and that's, you probably went to her temple, Hatshepsut.
Right.
Okay. She was one of 5 women that I noted from my master's degree in women's studies, which was talking about the matriarchy of Egypt. 5 women who took the male role. Now, there was a male role, so let's make that clear. And I said there was maybe 8. Okay, starting from the first to the last. Cleopatra the 7th, the last king of Egypt, was a woman. And the first one was a woman. But so there was a male role. Well, people say, well, wait a minute. Why are all these statues of the men? Why are all the men depicted on the walls? Because the system was a theocracy, not a monarchy. The priests ran everything. They decided where was built, what was built, and what inscriptions were. They formed an alliance with the ruling families, the militaristic families, the ruling classes, the tribes that came in and ruled Egypt. So they gave the male a position of Horus, being the Horus, the male leader of the family. And that's who they flattered. That's who they built all these things about, because they could maintain the priests and their corrupt wealth. It's just like today. I mean, this is the template for how religion is today.
Yeah.
It forms a corrupt alliance with the leaders of a country so that they keep themselves in power. And that's what they did.
Right.
But the kings were not important. It was the woman. The per-ah was the female. And so what you see in cartouches is usually a label that's given to a king, but it also is a label that the priests kept for themselves. So there were the priests of Ramses II, the priests of this and that. But it was a matriarchy, even till the end. We start out, the first ruler of a united Egypt was the woman I mentioned before, named Neithotep. She united with a male of the south. They formed a united country, and he changed the Sphinx. Her son changed the Sphinx to look like her. But she was first, the last Cleopatra, and she was the 7th woman to have that title. So she's actually literally Cleopatra the 7th, and she was the last king of Egypt. So the system was matriarchal, so that's important. So, well, you said that that changed. Yes, if you look at statues of Hatshepsut, they soften her feminine features. When they portray her as king, her breasts are almost gone, and she looks masculine in the face. So yes, they did masculinize certain female figures to make them look like, she's now the king, and so we're in patriarchal times, and the priests want to show that patriarchy is making influence, so they softened her features to make it look masculine. But it's a woman. You can tell it's a woman. You can tell it's her soft, gentle face is Hatshepsut, and she had what they call the Tutmoside face. She was very much the daughter of her father. She looked very much like her father, and her story is a great story. I'll just briefly say, her father was totally endeared with her. Her mother died, so there was no per-ah. He elevated her to per-ah. He elevated her to co-rule with him. He got sick.
The first daughter, or what?
She was the eldest daughter. It's always the eldest daughter. Yes, the eldest daughter. So then he died, and the priest wanted her to co-rule with her brother, her half-brother. They weren't even the same mother. And she reluctantly said, okay, they made him the Horus. She still was the pharaoh, but he was sickly, he was weak, he died. So then they wanted to take her nephew and make him in the king role and have her go. She said, no, the hell with you guys.
How old was she, do you think, at this time?
Maybe in her 30s, maybe in her 40s.
So she made the decision that she was going to be the king.
She was going to take both roles, the pharaoh and the king. And she's venerated as the king of Egypt. And so the Egyptologists try to make it like, oh, she was an anomaly. She was the only one. No, I can name 4 others, and maybe as many as 5 others. So no, it was okay. And she would not be challenged. That's the key. As the pharaoh, she told the priests, I'm going to be the king. And they couldn't say no. She is the pharaoh. Even in the middle of the 18th dynasty, the New Kingdom period, which was becoming very patriarchal, she still became king. And there was a woman who followed her in the 19th dynasty who also took the kingly role. So yeah, it was always matriarchal. So that's, again, these are the key teachings Hakim gave us, that it was a previous highly advanced civilization, that the netters were not gods and goddesses, they were aspects of creation, and the system was predominantly always matriarchal.
So in one of our parts of our trip, I talked to a different tour guide and I asked him about khemitology. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to talk about matriarchy or anything, and he got very weird. And then I talked to you about it, and you said that usually there's a lot of spies or like undercover government officials walking around listening to tour guides.
That started with Dr. Zahi Hawass in the 80s. Once groups were coming for spiritual things and starting to meditate at the sites, he didn't like that. So he would tell
they still don't like that.
No, you can't pray. No praying, no praying, no praying. No, so the antiquities police are the ones who would follow that. And the other tour guides would tell on you. The other tour guides are so jealous, and they know that they're being spied upon, so that they would listen to what we were saying, and they would tell us. But see, Hakim reached such a supreme status as the senior tour guide. In other words, he was a tour guide from 1952 until he passed, wested in 2008. 56 years. So he was the senior tour guide. Zahi Hawass could not mess with him. They would just tell the other guides. This is why I told you I was surprised that Ramsey shows a little bit of independence now to be able to say that, because they would always say Hakim was the devil. Hakim's teachings were no good. His teachings were all wrong. Don't listen to him.
Obviously there's an agenda. I mean, it's super clear. Why would they maintain this older Egyptian storyline if they can go deeper into the real khemitologist type of?
Well, the question then is, are they interested in the truth? Are they interested in just maintaining?
So what are they holding?
Are they interested in just maintaining their position?
But why?
Power, greed. All the books have been written saying it's this way. The Great Pyramid is Khufu.
Controlling the story of Egypt because it's in Egypt, but they're not letting any other independent thinkers speak and influence them.
That's right. Only the few. The younger ones are changing, though. I keep my eye on Egypt. I have contacts in Egypt every day. I still get it. A lot of the younger tour guides now, guys in their 20s and 30s, are beginning to challenge, are beginning to speak out. These are guys that have been born since the revolution, and they're a little more independent than the older guys. The older guys would just strictly not say a thing. When they say, "Oh, you're with Hakim, we can't talk to you," and they would say to us, "What you're presenting is only theory. It's only a theory." So say, well, what is the idea of the pyramid being a tomb for a king if that's not just a theory? And you have no evidence to back it up. There's not one shred of proof that anyone's ever buried in a pyramid. Not one shred.
I know.
But they'll say that's.
Yeah. I went to a lot of tombs, and the pyramid does not look like a tomb at all. Inside. It's impossible.
Well, I gave you the sound key to turn it on. I gave Riz the sound key, and he turned on the pyramid. That's it. And the fact of the matter, the water is still running underneath. The pyramid is still vibrating in ultrasound. We can normally not hear it, but that's why I told you guys, if it's possible, if you get them to turn the lights off and the fan off, when you're total darkness, total blackness in the king's chamber, when you go deep into meditation, you can hear the sound. You can hear the pyramid humming, but you have to go very deep. Most people can't do that. But still, every site is still active because the water's still running and it's still vibrating. All the sites are still vibrating, but at a sound frequency, ultrasound, which we normally don't hear with our normal range of hearing.
Let's talk about the Valley of the Kings for a second.
Okay.
So every time I go, I have a visceral reaction. So does everybody that I go with. At least 50% of the people who go either have a positive crying experience, they're very moved, or
Right.
they want to throw up, or they want to
Right.
get in a fight with someone, or they want to
Right.
run away.
Absolutely. I've seen all of that. And I've seen people throw up.
Yeah. And I've experienced a lot of things that have come up for me there too. And
Right.
I have the feeling of just hurry up and get out of there. But
Right.
what I was picking up on was that I felt there was a lot of political agenda since the beginning of time,
Right.
as grave robbers
Right.
were stealing, artifacts, and then
Right.
people from around the world were claiming tombs that
Right.
doesn't belong to them, and the government is trying to say that this
And tomb robbers were caught on the spot and executed right there.
that's what I'm
So
saying.
a lot of
That
people
area
were
is a
murdered.
bloodbath, I'm sure, since the beginning of time.
Again, that's my least favorite spot.
Yeah.
People ask me what's
can
my
feel
most
it.
favorite. I can name all of them, but Valley of the Kings, you have to do it. People want to see, and people want to go maybe to see Tut's tomb, which is worth seeing. So, et cetera. But yes, a lot of violence was there, and it's a distortion. Once again, we're going to tell you something that nobody else but Hakim and Khemitology says. Those tombs were not carved as tombs. They are water tunnels. They are ancient, pre-dynastic water tunnels that brought water, because Luxor, what is today Luxor, was once an ancient site, part of ancient Kemet, and water was brought to those sites. So what they did was they modified, just like the Giza Plateau, they modified the water tunnels into tombs. That's why the tombs are such different, crazy sizes. If you would go into as many tombs as I have, you would see that no two are alike. If they're building tombs, they would build one just like the other one.
Some of the tombs look like it was carved by a machine. Like the lines, or there was no hand. This is not hand drawn. Some of the temples we went to, I mean, this looks like a machine cut.
The pyramids were not carved by hand; they were cut with machines, but stone machines, not machines as we think. Metal machines. Stone was used as machines, and vibration crystal was used. As Hakim would say, this disc, which is not made of schist in the museum, it's made of what's called a metasedimentary rock, which includes a lot of mica, which produces an ultrasound when spinning at a high frequency. That sound produces an anti-gravity field. That's how they built the pyramid, and that's how they carved the stone. They use sound. Now, again, I sent Riz the one where I'm talking about this box it's in the museum, which nobody goes to see unless they're with us. That shows that they were cutting the lid out of the top of the box. They made a mistake. They left it there. Because they used sound, ultrasound, produced a wave in front of it. That wave would the stone would follow, and it altered the physics of the stone. They used sound to alter the physics of the hardest stones we know on this planet, made them softer so that they could cut right through them. But they used diamond to cut through.
Right.
They used the hardest stone essence we know on this planet. And they cut through granite and basalt and diorite like it was butter.
So would you agree that under the soil, there's at least 50% of the artifacts and tombs have not been discovered yet that are still there?
No, we said 80%.
By satellite, or because I know we've channeled it and you also know this?
We say 80%. That's the only 80%. Thing. The only thing we ever agreed with Zahi Was about is that he would make statements. Only 18 to 20% of what's under the sand has been excavated. And he's right. There's many ancient temples. There's other pyramids that are under the sand. Hakim said there originally were nine large pyramids on the Giza Plateau. We only see 3. We found evidence of a 4th that was excavated. He said further out in the desert, under the sand, is a 5th. There were 9 originally. So that defeats the whole Orion theory of Robert Duvall and others, that the pyramids were built to match the belt of Orion. The original were 9 large pyramids.
So speaking of Orion, isn't the pyramids under the constellation of Orion?
That's more likely Sirius when it was built.
Sirius.
Orion is a red herring. Yeah, Orion is a red herring. The ancient Khemitologists believed their ancestors came from the star system of Sirius. So
some people believe that the pyramids actually communicate with each other electricity-wise, or light or something. There's so many theories. I don't know what you feel about that.
They work as a grid. It's a grid. All the pyramids, the whole land of Osiris, which is what the book is about, is a grid line from the site of Dashur to the site of Abu Ghraib. That are all pyramids, all temples were on a grid line. So they functioned as an array, as a power plant, as power array. They all vibrated with each other. And then, yes, but here's one thing. Here's another thing. My friend, guy I was working with came to Hakim in '97 to work with. And '97 is when I spent 3 weeks with Hakim. That became the land of Osiris. He gave the whole theory out to me then. We would say some people believe that the Great Pyramid is not capped because there was a crystal rod that came up, and the Great Pyramid was used as a radio station to communicate with extraterrestrials.
Right.
Hakim would laugh, and he would point at the Great Pyramid, and he would say, "That's the radio station." So he believed that, but
Here's
it was
him
not.
walking in your book.
That's to Abu Ghraib. He's going to Abu Ghraib right there.
Keep talking. I want to show a couple pictures from your book.
And well, I can send you in color. And the key thing there was that it's not physical beings he was talking about. The Great Pyramid could communicate with interdimensional intelligences. So that the Khemitologists, people want to say, "Oh, aliens built the Great Pyramid." No, they didn't. Not physical beings. And did aliens manipulate our DNA? Way back, maybe hundreds of thousands of years ago. But it was us, people in the highest state of consciousness, who built the Great Pyramid. But did they?
The energy of the pyramid is activating every cell in your body.
Did they communicate with extraterrestrials, interdimensionals? Yes, through the pyramids.
I mean, how else would they get this sound technology ultimately?
Well, way back when. No, we say they got the sound technology from being in the highest state of consciousness by using all 160 degrees of consciousness.
I mean, and we all know alien technology is telepathic. Mm-hmm. So while you're in higher state of consciousness, you could also be tuning into the cosmic wisdom or information that's.
Well, that's how a lot of people believe Nikola Tesla got all his ideas. Nikola Tesla would go into meditation. He would see things in his mind, and then he would build them, patented them, and he claimed that he actually Nikola Tesla claimed he was in contact with people with the beings from Mars.
Riz is trans-channeled Tesla.
Yes.
And Red Eagle has talked about him a lot. He actually got a lot of information in his dream state as well. He would wake up and write it all out. Absolutely. And a lot of people do get a lot of their engineering ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah. Einstein did.
Yeah.
Einstein would say, when you want to solve a problem, go into silence, which meditation. Einstein was a mystic. He was a Rosicrucian. So he'd say, go into silence, go into meditation, and the answer will come.
When you personally meditate, when Stephen meditates on your own, the way you like to meditate, is there something that you are reaching or looking for or wanting to experience or communicate or feel you personally when you meditate?
Not to program anything. No, just to be open.
Just to be open to see what comes.
Open to any dimension, any consciousness. I'm wearing his Galabeya right now, okay? So I'm in contact with him constantly by even wearing his clothes. But when I'm in meditation, when I'm in silence, Hakim is constantly channeling through me. Only different than Riz does. I don't leave my body and another voice entity come in. Would you
ever consider channeling a book from Hakim?
We were working on that. No, that is it.
How did I know that?
and from Light into Darkness, even more so. But we were working on a third book. I think I told you. People wanted us to come up with a hieroglyphic dictionary according to Abdel Hakim. Well, he would say, well, nobody knows 360 senses. Nobody's in that state. But he thought about it and said, I could probably name 22, 24. I said, that's enough for a book, Papa. Let's start. We started. Blah, 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 blah. He gave me 7 and stopped. He said, Stephen, we're just doing the same as the Greeks did. We're putting labels on them. They will label themselves. This is the dawn of awakening. This is the consciousness that we're all headed to, where people will just know, not have to be taught, not have to receive information from outside. The Khemitologists just knew. They didn't have to write it down. That's why they didn't invent writing until the census started to wane. Once the census started to lose us, we had to write it down to keep the information there.
Well, the time was so different back then. So you had to be in tune with nature. You had to be in tune with the land. You had to, you're looking out at the cosmos and you're seeing the Milky Way galaxy and you're seeing planets. There's no light, no electricity to disturb you. You wake up and go to sleep based on seasons and changes of temperature, everything. Their senses were probably so acute.
Right. So listen to where the word nectar comes from, okay? Nectar. And they wrote it NTR, of course. There were no vowels. And I can't even pronounce it the way he would, because he would, like a Frenchman, really roll the R. Nectar, 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 nectar. But so, Greeks coming into Egypt, Ptolemaic Greeks, they heard them talk about these words, nectar. They pronounced it nature.
Nature.
No. They pronounced it nature. Their word was physis for nature. Physis for the physical. Physics. That's where we get physics. Physical. From the Greek word physis. But the Romans come in, the Latin-speaking people. They connect with the Greeks. They hear the Greeks say nature. Well, that's close to their word, natura, which is nature. So that's why we say the term for pyramid was per netter, the house of the netter, the house of nature, the house of energy. Had nothing to do with religion, had nothing to do with tomb, death, or anything. The tomb was called the tomb was called per ka. Ka is our ethereal body. It's our personality. It's that which stays with the body when we die. The ba, which they symbolize as a human head and a bird, was the spirit, which we say soul. They didn't. If you read Landeville's From Light into Darkness, you'll see we don't like to use the word soul, and I'll explain why. We talked about this when we talked about religion, but house of spirit, because why do they use a bird? Because the spirit is not confined to the physical; it can fly from the earth. So they use the symbol of the bird. So the tomb was the per ka, the house of the ka, where the ka is placed, where the kat, which is the body, the physical body, is placed. That has nothing to do with pyramid whatsoever.
So the other pyramids that are buried that have not been discovered yet that you mentioned, do you think they also serve the same purpose?
Yeah, that could still be
interesting
right.
to tune in.
See, chemitology is in its infancy. This is all going to go on when I'm long gone. And I have something to say to both you guys before we end. When we get to a point where you said we should close, let me know, because I have a specific message for you and Riz. And it's key to this idea that this is only at its beginning. So more things are covered every day. This is why I keep in tune with what's going on there. I have not let it go. I'm not doing tours anymore, but every day I contact Egypt to see what's going on. And everything they're discovering since I started, since 92, since I first went, but especially since 2018 when I stopped going, they've discovered new things. It all just adds. Nothing they have ever discovered disagrees with what Hakim taught. It only adds to it and puts it on. So they will continue to discover, find things that will just add to chemitology. So eventually Egyptology will just fall by the way.
Well, I saw the new Cairo Museum, and that is a sight to behold. It is giant. It's like an airplane hangar or bigger.
Bigger. It's going to be one of the great museums of the world.
And really. So far, the old Cairo Museum, because I remember how much was stuffed in there before, 50% of it has already been moved.
Yes.
And I think they're going to keep, from what I heard, they're going to keep the old museum and they're going to just use what had been in storage and in the basement. They're going to keep it in that museum.
Well, that's interesting because a lot of great things stored in the basement. I think.
Oh, I could imagine.
They won't want to show some of them because, but yeah. And what it looks like is when you go back in December, it will be open. What it looks like they're planning to do is open it in November to be 100-year anniversary of the opening of Tut's tomb. So there'll be a grand exhibit to Tut. All the Tut stuff will be there, and they'll make it a grand opening. So which they love to do. They love the drama. They always love the spectacular.
Oh yeah. They also want to. I heard they were wanting to make a roadway or a bridgeway from the big pyramid, the Great Pyramid, up to the new Cairo Museum.
Well, I'll tell you what
I'll
tell you what they wanted, which is probably going to happen, which is what Zahir Wasp proposed over 10 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, is they build a monorail.
They did.
Around the Giza Plateau. and people won't go in the pyramids anymore. They will just see them from the outside and be told by the guides what's in there and won't go in there anymore for themselves. That's going to be the future. That's how corrupt it's gotten. I don't want to go there because the Egyptian government is selling the sites to foreign investors. I don't want to go there. We're not going to do negative.
You know, the big. I think the big elephant in the room is, hasn't there been just corruption in these sites since they were discovered, since the beginning?
Since the beginning of the civilization.
Yeah, I mean, because it's who has control. This is a great tourist site. This is a great site where energy vortexes and origins are. So I can imagine how many people want to go. So this is who can control this.
And this is why the prices have gone off the wall. I can tell you, if I would go with you a whole story of how the prices have changed, it would be hours in itself. But
yeah,
I used to do tours with Hakim's second youngest son, Yusuf. I don't do them anymore. But Yusuf used to tell our groups, he'd sit in front of the bus and he'd say on the microphone to the groups, you people call it corruption. In Egypt, we call it the way of life.
Yeah, well, you know, if you were born and raised in an environment, a land, and a culture that is surrounded by and cultivated by these ancient monolithic like temples and everything that's around, you're just surrounded by it. So what are you going to do? You're going to have to monetize it in some way.
Well, and if you don't respect it, like Islam.
Well, you know, people can touch everything over there.
I mean, let me tell you, when Islam comes in, doesn't recognize it at all. So when Europeans start coming, and they started coming from the 16th, even in the 15th, there's a story of a man coming in the 15th century. But the 16th century Europeans started coming. Well, the Arabs said, oh, they find this stuff interesting. They would chip off the noses, while you find so many noses missing from statues.
A lot of noses are missing. That was a big
They would sell it. They would sell it to the tourists. That's what started the corruption. They would break off pieces.
A lot of missing
break off pieces
everywhere.
There was also a thing in Islam. If you cut off one's nose, you take away his power. That's why the Sphinx's nose is missing.
Yeah.
Her nose was blown off in the 13th century by followers of Salah ad-Din, that were called the Mamelukes. And they used the Sphinx for artillery practice. And they shot her nose off. Now, the Arabs in Egypt today will tell you the French did it because they don't cop to it. But that's not true.
This area of Kemet, or ancient Egypt, holds just, it is not just a vortex unto itself. How would I say that? It's not already there, but it's also because people are attracted to it. And then there's so much political agenda and religious agenda. So over the centuries, it's created like this synergistic, like
it's thousands
explosive.
The first tourists were Syrians, were Greeks, were Persians. We're talking about BCE. I'm talking about 2500 BCE, the first tourists came in. I mean, as soon as other cultures realized what this culture was, and people would visit and say, where do you see these monuments? Where do you see these statues? And everybody would go. So tourism in Egypt goes back 5,000 years. I mean, that's the way it is. And as I said, we used to say to people, Hakim's teachings were like peeling away the layers of an onion. Peel away the Islamic layer that's on top. Peel away the Coptic Christian layer, which is underneath that. Then peel away the Jewish layer, which most people don't talk about, which is under that. Then peel away the Roman layer. Then peel away the Greek layer. Then you have to peel away the dynasties. Peel away the dynastic layer, and there's ancient Kemet.
Oh my gosh. And you know, right now, like on TikTok, you know, I have kids and I pay attention to what they're watching. There's this phenomenon called spiritual TikTok, hashtag spiritual TikTok. Riz is now finally on it. So, and he has gotten a lot of interest and views and comments just on his channeling and spiritual.
I'm sure.
But young people under the age of 25 are wanting to know more about their origins, more about metaphysics. They want to know more about our multidimensional selves, the multiverse. And so they're being guided and led to these ancient sites and wanting to know, quote unquote, the truth. So what we're speaking about now, and what Hakim was sometimes revered for and sometimes ridiculed for, same like you, and bringing these conversations may seem like outrageous to some people, but in the future is going to be received as just, this is the latest technology. It's like the latest wisdom.
That's what Hakim called the awakening. He called this time the awakening. I'm constantly telling people we have to wake the F up. Wake up. Wake up. We're being taught, we're being treated as children who are asleep, where we have to be told how to think, how to shit, how to piss, whatever. We have to do everything we're being told instead of thinking for ourselves, instead of coming to that understanding ourselves. I told you straight up, being a wisdom teacher is no bed of roses.
I am going to throw something at you is off the beaten path. Give me a second to say it all, because I ran this by Erica and Riz yesterday, and they were blown away. So I came up with the realization about the current pandemic that has totally blown open the conversation of conspiracies to a degree that we've never seen it before.
Good.
And I have interacted many times with friends, family, clients who are in the conspiracy world.
Right.
People have lost friendships over this. People have lost close
Right.
family, friends, and relationships have broken apart because of different belief systems. So
Right.
here's my conclusion. I came to, it's raw data. I really stand by it. I believe that this is actually what's happening. So there are several ways that you can look at this pandemic. There are several
Right.
ways you can look at everything that's going on in the layers, the unseen layers of political agendas and pharmaceuticals and germ, what are they called? Germ wars, just
Right.
like germ warfare,
Biological warfare, right?
yeah,
Bio
so
warfare.
you can go into the matrix and you can go find whatever you want to find.
Right.
Bottom line, as soon as the vaccine came into our consciousness, this is
Right.
where people divided, right?
Right. Right.
So you have people who say, you have to take it, otherwise you're going to die. There's
Right.
other people who say, I'm just going to take it, and I
Right.
just am going to cross my fingers and hope I make it,
Right.
and hope that this is all legit. Or I just don't want to fight the powers that be. I'm not
Right.
going to go into go live in the mountains and fight the powers that are controlling this.
Right.
And then there's other people who say, oh, hell no, I'm picketing, I'm rushing the White House, I'm going to take everybody out, and we're going to take down Big Pharma, we're going to go into the infrastructure, we're going to kill everybody, whatever, the renegades. Right. And then you have the people, the silent, quiet types that just run to the hills and they don't want anybody touching them with a needle, etc. Okay.
That's right.
So you have your different perspectives, right?
Right.
So now the people who are wanting to function in society or need to function, need to work, need to see people, need to go to school, need to use the hospital care system, people who are in the matrix that have no choice, like myself, who I have children, they go to public school, I have life, I have to meet with people, and I have to go into stores and grocery stores. So I'm very active in a big city.
Right. That's why you got it. That's why you got it.
Right. Now, oh yeah, COVID? Oh, please. Of course. Oh, that's just a given for sure. For sure. I mean, I just knew that was going to happen. It's a matter of time, Right. And with a vaccine or not, it doesn't matter. I knew that I was going to get it. But here's what I want to come down to. I just wanted to lay that out there, that's the what kind of like the loose idea of what's happening. Now, so what I've noticed is that the people who believe in the conspiracy agendas, like the QAnon people,
right. That Bill Gates has put a chip in the vaccine that monitors us and alters our DNA. That
group, okay.
Right.
So they have become like so intense. It's like war. It's almost a war mentality. It's almost like they want to go to war, right?
Almost religious, right?
Yes. So what they fail to see, and this is what I want to say out loud, what they fail to see. And I bless everybody for their wisdom, and I bless everybody for their journey, and I bless everybody for what they're doing.
All have some truth. Everything you mentioned, every category has some truth.
Yes, and no one's trying to take that away from anyone. Okay. But what I notice is that they keep thinking that the other side drank the Kool-Aid, and they're trying to tell everybody the other side, and we're trying to tell them, you drank the Kool-Aid.
That was the beauty of Enoch, of his channeling. Of when Riz channeled that to it was not Enoch. What's the other one?
No, Enoch.
No, he first channeled about the pandemic.
Phineas?
Yeah, Phineas. Phineas had it. Phineas said
of Science of the Mind.
Phineas said everything you're saying. Everybody, this side thinks we're right, you're wrong. We think
we're
right.
I want to go a little bit further into the human psyche here for a second, and I want you to strap on because this is it. Okay, I'm going to tell you something right now. Here's what I think, and here's why I think that happened. I think people came out of the closet in big droves, and they came out to like all I can say is like a war type of mentality. I don't want to call it anything else. It's just a war energy. It's an energy of like, you're wrong, we're right, we're going to prove it, we're going to take you down. Like, isn't
that what's happening right now in the whole world?
But let me tell you something. If you take those people that are doing that and look at their personal lives and go deep into their soul work, you're going to find people who are looking for any excuse to do this. Anything. Give me anything. At first it was, I'm trans, I'm gay, I'm not, I'm black, I'm white, something to fight. Give me something to fight.
All labels that separate us.
Anything that separates. As long as it has a frequency, an energy, and I can get some powerful like fight in there, I'm in. Like, get me in the ring. It's like they need an excuse to explode this energy that they have instead of using it for creative technology, for creative innovation,
or finding
peaceful conversations,
or finding common ground.
So instead, the quiet ones like us, who stay quiet, just do our job, do our work, eat our food, whatever, learn about humanity and archaeology and learn about the land and seeds and crops and agriculture and understand just life. Okay, we stay pretty quiet. What's really funny is that we're the ones that should be the loudest ones on the planet. And the ones that are throwing the biggest tantrums should sit down and watch and listen to people who are quiet like us. We're not pushovers. What we're actually doing is watching people freak out and drink the Kool-Aid who think they're not drinking it and blaming everybody else that they're drinking it when actually they're the ones that are drinking it.
If you understand the pervading energy of the cycle, you understand. That is what Amen is all about. Separation, duality, us and them.
Yes.
So that led to religions.
So
what is the purpose of every major patriarchal religion? Not to unite people, to say we got it and everybody else is wrong.
That's right. So last night, because every time you and I get together, there's a planetary message that goes out. Okay, so last night I had a meditation. I'm going to share this meditation with you. It was in the middle of my dream, and it's the most profound thing that I've ever experienced, and I have to share it because you have something to do with it, obviously, because I knew this interview was coming, and I don't take any of these things lightly.
I got something last night too, which is what I'm going to share.
Okay, good. So I'm going to share mine, and then you can share yours after.
Yes.
Okay. So in my dream, I asked the powers that be, God, higher intelligence, my guides, love, energy. I just asked, how can I get more love, extract more love out of my experience with my husband? That was my question. That's a big question.
Really?
How can I extract and feel more love inside of the relationship I have with my husband?
Does that mean you think you're not getting enough?
Well, always, because I'm a Taurus. I need to constantly consume. It's a nonstop, IV drip, just like IV love, attention drip, constant. That's the Taurus nature, right? The baby toddler has to always have. Okay, so it guided me into the most beautiful thing I have ever experienced ever. So it said, how do you know Riz is not the vehicle that is going to present this question to you? So the question is actually to yourself, how much love can you feel as a receiver? So is it really Riz, or is it really the conversation? How much can you experience? And they said, and then I said, well, I want to open this door, like an aperture of a camera. I want to open this door and experience more love. And they said, that is the feeling people have when they die. The reason they say that it's a tunnel, they go through a tunnel, is because what's happening is their aperture of how much they can receive love is this much. And when they leave, they have no more pressures of the earth of duality and contrasting beliefs. So what happens is they release all their tension and the tunnel opens, and they think it's a tunnel. It's not. And then it keeps on going and their consciousness keeps going. And guess what happens? Inside of that, they find no judgment because there is none. And they find there's no duality duality, no separatism. There's no
None.
right or wrong, you or me,
There's
there or
only love. There's
it's all
only
oneness.
love.
It's all oneness. So
That's
they
all it
said,
is.
why do you have to wait to die to feel the love you want to feel now?
There you go. There you go.
And I said, well, this is something I've been wanting and I know about, but how come it's coming through this question I'm asking? Because the question I'm asking is in the temporal 3D world, and I'm thinking it's about Riz. And they're like, no, Riz is the vehicle.
That's right.
He's just the vehicle. He got
That's
you
right.
here to this question.
That's right.
And then the last question is, how can I feel more love in general? Like, how can I be a bigger receiver? And they said, for the amount of love you want to receive is what you will feel. So how much love can you receive? How much can you accept? How much do you want to feel with all of your senses? Then that is how much you will get.
Right. I can give you more to that. Because as we work on ourselves, as we get rid of the fear, the nonsense, the garbage that were laid on us from birth, from parents, from teachers, from society, from religion, from everyone else, once we get rid of all of that garbage, the more we get rid of it, the more we rise in love. Rajneesh used to teach, if you think your love is dependent on an other, when that other goes away, your love is gone.
Right. So if you look at where our pressure.
Love is an overflowing of self. You fill yourself with so much love that you cannot contain it, so you must give it freely and unconditionally to everyone else.
So you want to hear something interesting about love? Is guess what's not in there is pressure. We feel so much pressure to do everything.
That's again,
to do it right, to do it wrong, to do it this way, that way. They did it, they didn't do it, you did it, I did it. So much pressure.
All the garbage that's put on us that we have to get rid of.
Right. So when we die, we release the pressure, the baggage.
Right.
So why do we need to wait until we leave this body to do that?
We don't. That's what being enlightened is all about.
That's right.
That's what the path of the mystic is all about. So
if people want to put up a big fight,
the path that Jesus went on is called the Path of Horus.
Right.
R.A. Schwaller-Delubich said the Khemitologists taught two ways of reaching consciousness. The path of Osiris, wizard, which means to be born, to die, to reincarnate, to come back again, keep clearing karma, keep life after life after life, until you finally can get off the wheel. And you've reached
the wheel, the karma wheel.
The path of Horus,
the programmed wheel.
To do it in one lifetime, to make the conscious decision, I'm going to get clear all my karma, all my garbage, and it is the path that Jesus went on, the Horian path. But it means pain, it means suffering, it means having to deal with the origins of pain and suffering. And this is what the Buddha went on. The Buddha was kept a secret in his house. His father wouldn't let him go out to witness the suffering in the world. One day he goes out and he sees poor people starving. He says, what is this? This is the world. I've been kept from this. So he goes out into the world to learn to suffer, to starve, to meditate, to become enlightened. So the answer is, my personal message for you guys. As I said, I've done 20 tours in 20 years. Literally hundreds of people came to Egypt with me. Of those hundreds, maybe 12 really got it.
12 were what?
Really got it.
Oh, really got it. Okay.
Got it, what we were teaching, get what we were trying to put out. I just recently got contacted, an email from a young fellow, he's not young anymore, who came with me in 2007 with his mother. And out of the blue, he decided to contact me again. And I went back into my notes, which is great. I'm so glad I journaled every time I was in Egypt, because I go back and read these journals all the time and realize, oh my God, this experience, that, I forgot about that, this and that. Nick was one of those that I wrote in my journal. Nick really gets it. Really, Nick understands that the path of the netters is a path of working on oneself. He understood it. He contacted me yesterday. So, as the tradition that Hakim had, his oral tradition, he was chosen by his uncle. I'm sure his uncle chose him because his grandfather had chosen his uncle to follow the tradition. He chose me to be the one to bring the tradition forward and to follow. I have no disciple that I can give it all to. I have different people contact me, but there's no one that's studying with me every day, wanting to know, wanting to be the one to carry it forward. So now I'm not saying that I'm telling you this is what you guys have to do. What I was told was, my job is almost done, okay? I have to know that these teachings will go on because that's what it's about, paying it forward. You guys are key. This is what key to me. Because of who you are and the age group you are, because of the fact that you have 5 children, that you can relate to all of those age groups And what I noticed when Riz was channeling in the street with some young Hispanic ladies in LA, you guys are the future. Now, I'm not saying you're my heirs, that you're going to be the ones. You're the ones to pass all the wisdom teaching I have too, that you're going to share it. Because, as you mentioned, you've already said the key to me in this discussion. The answer lies in what's called Gen X and Gen Y.
Right.
The baby boomers have a long way to go to come open to it. But you're part of the baby boomers. Not quite. You're before the baby boomers. But you're between the Gen X. You children are Gen X and Gen Y. Riz can they listen to you guys. They respect you guys. You guys can communicate with them. So that's the answer. The only answer is the young people that you talked about. Those that want to know their ancestry. I mean, I love this show that's on PBS, usually on Tuesday nights. One of my heroes is Professor Henry Louis Gates Jr. of Harvard, who's done a lot about Black history, about the Reconstruction period, about the Black church, and about African civilizations. He's one of my idols. I love him. He has the great ability to communicate to other people and to the younger groups. This is what it has to be done. We have to be able to get to those that are going to be the ones who are going to carry on. And they're the ones. There's a lot of people that you mentioned about the dichotomy of not being vaxxed, et cetera, who are stuck in conspiracy theory. And by the way, I became what could be called a conspiracy theorist on November 22nd, 1963, before you guys were even born, when I knew that Lee Harvey Oswald did not kill John Kennedy. I knew it. I knew it with every ounce of my being. And so it went on from there. But where it goes is, it is the young. It is those people now in the 20s and 30s. And in fact, it's the people that are born in the 21st century that are now going to be 22 years old. They don't know anything about the 20th century. They experience none of that. So they have to be taught what went before and what's led to this point and why we're living in a dying system of patriarchy that eventually has to go. So I see you and Riz as being very key people. This is why it's no accident you saw my interview with George Norrie and said, oh, I'd like to talk to this guy. And why we had a series of 5-6 lectures, interviews that were incredible. People have seen them, told me, wow, there was so much. I said it was because of her, because Oriah brought that all out of me. Not everybody brings all of this out of me as you do. Because
I recognize you, Stephen. That's the thing. Well, first of all,
and I recognize you, and I recognize you, and I recognize Wiz.
My father's name is Stephen Mehler, and he passed away when I was about 25. And so your name is Stephen Mehler.
Mehler. It's still Miller. Miller is the English of Mehler. It's the same thing.
And he spells it Steven. But
so
I recognized you from the moment I heard your voice. I didn't even see your face yet. I heard you speaking, and I was listening to a podcast or a broadcast of something or interview, and I heard you speaking, and I was like, wait, this guy knows something, and he knows it the way I know it. And I was like, wait, that's saying a lot, because I've been in front of 10,000 hours of trans-channeled material. I worked, and I've done 150 psilocybin journeys, and blah, 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 blah. I can go on and on with my history. Right. And so I said, wait, this guy knows something. So then what was interesting is I was listening to the people who have interviewed you, and I was like, no, nobody knows how to interview him. Wait, hold on, nobody knows how to interview this guy. And I was like, I kept going through all your interviews, and I was like, nobody knows how to talk to him. And I said, I have to reach out to him. I have to tell him I know who you are, and I know how to talk to you.
Right. And so then he said, how did you know that I was a Commission priestess? Please. Of course I knew that.
Well, I kind of already knew that was there, but I just didn't put any words to it.
That's what I want. I wanted to hear what you got from Sekhmet, if you got anything personal from her, because she does give personal messages.
When I went into that area, every time I go in there, my heart starts palpitating. It goes really, really fast.
Me too.
And it's like my energy goes up to my throat chakra, and I can't, I'm stiff. I don't know what to do in there. And there's 50 million orbs flying everywhere. And all I could do is just grab my phone and videotape it. I don't even know. It's like a cross section of cosmic energies, fields, magnetic fields, it just comes in all together. But this was where the high priestess also did their ceremonies on the left-hand side of that temple. And then on the right-hand side is where her statue is, which, by the way, none of these artifacts are enclosed in glass or anything, and people can just touch them.
They don't know. They don't know that they don't know that that statue is the oldest extant statue of a netter in Egypt. She's at least 4,000 to 6,000 years old. She's before the dynasties. That's why there's no inscriptions anywhere about her on the walls or on her. But the key is, let me say it so that you understand, because there is a prayer I do to her when I go in there. The next time you go in December, I want you to do what I do, and Riz can do it too. When we usually get there, the keepers know to let me go in first. I go in and I spend 30 seconds, a couple of minutes with her in deep communion and get my personal message, and then I let them bring everybody else in, and I stand on the side and watch everybody's reaction to her. Okay, Sekhmet. What does it mean? Sechem is the Commission word for power. Power. Sekhmet is the feminine expression of power. So she is the power. What is the power? The unconditional love of mother. That was the force which was the greatest force to the ancient Commissions in the universe. The unconditional love of mother. So therefore they saw creation as female, as feminine, nude. It was her unconditional love that gave birth to creation. So Sekhmet is the protectress. In the New Kingdom period, she becomes distorted. Again, patriarchy is coming in, and they make her the goddess of war. So, but here's a prayer that Hakim taught me. And when I talked to one of our guides, he laughed at Hakim's translation. Hakim would say the expression, Sechem Sesh Gir Set. Sechem Sesh Gir Set. I say that prayer to her when I see her. What does it mean? Well, in his translation, it means when Set speaks, when Sekhmet speaks, Set shuts up. What does that mean? Set is another of those netters that represents our age today. Separation, duality. Okay? The people. Sesh is the people. So it means the power of the people is what that Set shuts up. Dear Set. So it's saying that when the mother, the unconditional love of mother is there can be no duality.
Is that why I can't talk when I'm in there?
Yeah. Oh, we never lecture in there, no. Never lecture in the Great Pyramid. I lecture also outside the Great Pyramid. When we're in the Great Pyramid, it's only experience. There's no lecturing.
What was that frequency you told Riz to ohm at? Because he did find that frequency. It was like was it 43?
Well, it's a low basso tone. I don't know.
Okay.
I know as a musician, it's like, oh.
Oh, it's like the Mongolian throat singers.
That turns on the granite. That turns on the cyanide granite in the whole pyramid.
Do you know what's really interesting? This is just random trivia. On my DNA report, which I've done an extensive one, I did an international one as well. I go back to the Saxons. I go back to the Vikings, which are Germanic, right? Yeah. So that's my line. And Riz's line is the Mongolian line. So we have a Mongolian warrior and a Viking Valkyrie.
It even could be Tibetan with Riz, because it goes to Tibetan culture. The Ban culture of Tibet goes way before Buddhism. It's very,
we're
very
going
old.
To the we're not going to see the Dalai Lama because he's hard to see anymore.
Dharamsala.
We're going to his monastery this October.
In Dharamsala.
Yeah.
That's great.
We have a group going out.
I love the Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
But so that's the point. I have to pass it forward. I'm passing it forward to you both. It's your obligation. It's your birthright.
Even I don't have a choice.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I didn't have a choice either.
If you realize it's not up to me. It has nothing to do with me. I am the vehicle. I know you. I know who you are, and I know your frequency. So I'm tuned into your radio dial. Yeah. So all I do is just continue the water stream from you on to the world. I don't have a personal opinion about it, or I have an agenda. All I know is I'm here. I'm available. Speak.
Right. Well, I just knew every time Hakim would tell me something, I just knew it was right. I mean, the Sphinx was telling me all the time, listen to him. That's the man. He knows. That's the man.
Oh, Hakim, I wish he was still here so we can all play with him still and have fun with him.
He is still here. He's with me every day.
He's with us all the time.
Every day. So listen. You talked about the period. I was just listening to Krishna Das yesterday. I told you he was channeling. He talked about amazing things. He talked about giving that Ram Dass gave his guru who was Neem Karoli Baba, but that wasn't his name. He called him Maharishi. They called him Maharishi. He gave him one time a whole ton of acid to take. Maharishi. They didn't know if they looked away. Okay, waited for hours. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. So it comes back to the States, and Ram Dass still has some doubt. You know, he's still got the mind, the monkey mind, they call it. Let me get rid of this here. Okay. And so he's still, somebody said, did you actually see him take it? I mean, I can't believe, the people would tell him, I can't believe someone took that massive dose of LSD and nothing happened. So Ram Dass started to have a little doubt. Well, I never actually saw him take it. So, well, I don't know. So they went back again to India. And Krishna Das was with Ram Dass when this happened. So he's talking. So without ever mentioning it, the Maharishi comes and says to him, so the last time I was here, you were here, you gave me some of that yogi medicine. That's what he called it. The yogi medicine. He said, well, yes, I think so. And he said, did I take it? And Ram Dass said, I think so. He says, you have more? He says, yeah. He lays out 4 tabs. One tab, as as Krishna Das said, 1 tab would be enough to put an elephant on the moon. But he says 4 tabs. So he takes 1 at a time, puts it up in the air, shows it. Oh, takes 2. Oh, takes 3. Oh, takes 4. Oh. So Krishna Das, Ram Dass knew he took it this time. They waited for hours. Nothing happened. So that's the point. The point is the psychedelics are an express line. They show you what can be.
I know about this. It's happened to me and people I know, and we know what that is. And it really is just when your guides and your higher self does not want you to have the experience, you won't.
Right, but no, he wasn't.
Just blocks you.
He was telling them that they don't need to use the yogi medicine, but he was not telling them don't take it. He's saying, because you come back and you're still back to where you were.
Right.
It's not permanent. You want to be there permanently. That's meditating. That's doing the practice.
Right.
You want to be there permanently. So it's a beautiful story.
Well, Stephen, I want to keep this invitation open. I want you to let me know when you have something you want to talk about. This forum is always open to you.
Well, I'd like to see if members in your group who just went to Egypt, or members in the group that are coming to Egypt with you in December, will now send you any notes, messages saying, well, I'd like him to talk about this. Let him talk about that. So see if you can gather more questions for me, and we'll just do more chemitology.
Yeah, you know what I noticed about the questions is people are so in awe and completely stunned by what they're seeing and feeling.
First time
they are, and they have this, like, they're gobsmacked and they don't know how to speak or what to say. I've had to ask questions for them.
Absolutely.
Because that's
why you asked all the questions to.
I know. Because I talked to them after that one session, and I asked, why didn't anybody ask questions? They said it's like their brain went blank.
That's what happens. Absolutely. The left brain goes dead in Egypt. The right brain comes alive. I mean, I always would tell people, don't worry about it. Ask me questions later when you get home. Think about it. It'll come to you with dreams. 6 months after you return from Egypt, you'll say, that's true. Oh, that's what it was about. So it does
work on you that way. I noticed that coming back from Egypt always is where I get the impact of what just happened.
Right.
It's the after effect. I always get, it comes through my bones, my cells.
And like you did, I always crash when I come back from Egypt. I always fall out and have to sleep for almost a whole day.
Yeah, in bed.
I mean, at first times I used to go to Egypt and come back to work. You imagine that? And go to work the next day, and I'd be at work. I wouldn't be doing anything. That was supposed to happen.
So thank you so much, Stephen. You know how I feel about you and your wife. I'm so grateful for both of you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for being you.
So next time we'll speak. We don't know what it's going to be, but we'll be guided.
That's right. It's when we're both in the right space.
That's right. All right. Thank you very much.
Namaste, Habibi.
Namaste.